Hello, I'm Joanne Jenkins, Chief Executive Officer of AARP, America's largest membership organization with 38 million Americans 50 and over. And we're proud to serve nearly 6 million AARP members who are current or former military service members. We've created free resources, tools, and community programs to help veterans and military families meet their daily challenges head-on, whether on the job or at home. For example, the AARP Fraud Watch Network, in partnership with Operation Protect Veterans, has a new online Veterans Fraud Center detailing the latest scams targeting veterans and military families and tips on how to stay safe. AARP's Veterans and Military Spouse Job Center provides a one-stop job hub where you can get free tools, resources, and skills builder courses, and our job board directly connects veterans and military spouses to service-friendly employers wanting to hire them. When you're a military veteran caregiver, you start young, care longer, and face many unique challenges. That's why AARP provides a military caregiving guide and a veterans health benefits navigator. Through our 53 state offices and nationwide network, AARP can help you find a new mission through volunteer service that provides the right opportunity to give back to your community and fellow veterans. At AARP, we're on a mission to support veterans and military families. Thank you.
Thanks to AARP CEO Joanne Jenkins. We are so excited to partner with AARP for our Blue Star Welcome Week and to welcome everyone who is joining us here today. I want to say first off that our thoughts and our hopes are with all of our members, all of the military and veteran families, service members in Florida. We know it's a really challenging time. We stand with them and with the 7,000 National Guard deployed to help support the operations there. I'm excited for this career webinar that we have today. We're going to hear stories from military spouses and veterans and have some really great expert discussions and advice from the VA Center for Women Veterans, the Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce, of course, AARP, and of course, Blue Star Family's own career expert from T-Mobile. And we've got some super fun personal brand and style tips from our expert, E'Beth Goad. So I want to once again thank AARP for their continued partnership and for allowing us to have this fantastic webinar with you all here today. And I want to mention that this topic of military spouse careers is one that's very close to my heart. I, like many other military spouses, entered this journey with a career, and my service members' commitment to the Marine Corps, in our case, changed that up. I was 33 years old when I got married and well on the way in my career. And the next year, after we moved to Okinawa, I found myself earning 1% of my previous salary. In many of my subsequent years as a military spouse, I earned 10% or 20% of my previous salary. I was doing well. It's a struggle. You need to take care of your family, support your service member, and find a way to keep your career going to support your own dreams, but also to support your family. We know that any one of us may need to support our family at any minute. And all of us are going to transition out of the military at some point. And that career, that work will help that make that transition go smoother. We also know, Blue Star Families knows from our work, that meaningful work is one of the most important supporters of community connection and of overall well-being. So military spouses are critical to military readiness. Spouse underemployment and unemployment undermines our ability to play that important role. The solution is for organizations, government, and us working amongst ourselves to find solutions so all of us can meet our dreams even while we serve and support the military service. So data confirms that the stories we're hearing from our military spouses and veterans is real. Military spouse employment is consistently a top 5 concern year over year in all of Blue Star Families surveys. We know that nearly half of active duty spouse respondents and a quarter of active duty service members respondents are very concerned about this issue. And veteran employment is a top 5 issue among respondents on the veteran side as well. So AARP is supporting us today because they are invested in helping military spouses and female veterans up-level their job search, and we appreciate them for that. AARP's Veteran and Military Spouse Job Center has free courses, tools, resources to give each and every one of us an edge on our job search, and we'll be providing those resources for you here. And now I'm really excited to tee up a Marine Corps spouse that has firsthand experience navigating some of the challenges and finding some solutions. Vashti is an example of network in action. Let Vashti tell her story.
My name is Vashti and my husband is an active duty Marine. When we were getting ready to PCS, I had already been unemployed. I had left my job as a director of communications because I knew I really needed to focus on getting us from one destination to another. More importantly, I knew I wouldn't be able to take this job with me because it was based in San Diego. Once that PCS happened, that's when I started going on interviews. All of that really changed though when I found out I was pregnant, which was maybe 3 weeks into living here in Fort Worth. And it was just something that told me, oh my goodness, now I'm really not gonna get a job because, who was gonna wanna hire a pregnant woman who is literally about to give birth? I wanna say once I hit my second or third trimester, probably the end of my second trimester, beginning of my third trimester, I just completely stopped looking for work. A month or two after I had her, I decided, you know what? I'm ready to get back into the game, start putting applications out there again, start working again. I've known Laura for a few years now, and I worked with her using Spouseforce. So she helped me set up a profile, setting my preferences to what I would be interested in. And I also used her as a resource to help me find specifically remote work. I knew I wanted to be home with my baby. I had posted on LinkedIn that I was open to work, and Laura had tagged one of the hiring managers of my employer, and that's how I found out about the position, and I immediately just applied to a position like that. I wasted no time. I would absolutely recommend Blue Star Families and Careers to another friend. And the reason why I would recommend them is because without them, I wouldn't have found a future in my career. Matter of fact, I wouldn't have found the reinvention of my career. As someone who was formerly in the broadcasting industry, I really thought that I would never find anything meaningful as a professional woman. But Blue Star Families, they saw the skills that I had from the industry that I used to work in. They saw my personality and what I have to offer as a professional, as a person. And they saw someone who was ready to take the bull by the horn and support their family, and more importantly, support themselves, because I'm more than just the military spouse whose husband goes on field ops every month. I'm more than just the new mom who stays home with her daughter all day. I'm also a professional woman who wants to build a future for her family, and who also wants to be a person that her daughter looks up to as a military mom, military wife, and a professional woman.
What a super motivating video, and so appreciate Vashti sharing her story. It's a great example of networking in action, something we really believe in here at Blue Star Families. And one of Blue Star Families' big priorities, we're here to make sure families feel supported and connected to their communities. And we know that employment is a really big part of that. So let's move on to our expert panel. I'm excited to introduce our panelists and share their backgrounds, roles, and position. Jamie Chapman is COO and co-founder of the Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce. Jamie, I'll let you introduce yourself before we move on.
There is a train happening right now, 600 meters that way. So if you can hear it, I'm sorry. I'm Jamie. I'm one of the original founders of the Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce. And by day, I also work at Amazon Web Services as Senior Military Talent Program Manager. So I bring perspectives both from the traditional employment side of the house as well as for self-employment.
Super. And let me now introduce Lourdes Tiglio, the director of the VA Center for Women's Veterans. Lourdes.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Lourdes. I am currently the executive director for the Center for Women Veterans. I definitely come from a little bit of a unique background. Not only am I a military veteran, but also have traversed several different sectors of healthcare, humanitarian work, tech, and now government.
Super. And finally, I'm delighted to introduce AARP social strategist, Danielle Williams. Danielle?
Hello, everyone. Danielle. I'm actually seeing a couple of people in the chat talking about being from Raleigh. Really excited, even though I'm normally working out of AARP headquarters in DC. I'm in Raleigh today and very excited to see fellow North Carolinians. But yeah, I work in social media. I'm the social strategist there. And really excited to be able to talk to you about some of our offerings for veterans who are job searching, and for military spouses as well. So hello, everyone.
Thanks so much for being with us. And I've got a bunch of questions to ask you. And I also welcome our listeners to put some questions in the chat if we get through the ones we have initially. So Jamie, I'd love to start with you. It's really an exciting program that you all have put together, Military Spouse Chamber of Commerce. I want to ask you in particular, what resources are available or would you recommend for military spouses who want to launch their own businesses, find success in self-employment? We find in our surveys that that's a top 3 ambition for military spouses is self-employment or owning their own business. So what would you offer?
I also have a dog barking and a doorbell ringing now. So I don't know what's happening. The first 13 minutes of our Zoom chat and my house is going crazy. So I would like to just say, first of all, I forgot to tell you I'm a veteran. I served in the Army for 6 years and now I'm an active duty Army spouse. I forgot to mention that detail a moment ago. So in terms of resources for military spouses who are interested in self-employment, of course, the Military Spouse Chamber is a resource I'll recommend, but there are a couple of others as well that I like to talk about. One of my favorite is the IVMF Syracuse programming. They have phenomenal curriculum and they do an amazing job with research as well. Then another program that I like for training is the Rosie Network. They have a program called the Service to CEO. You get together in a cohort, be it in person or digitally, and you learn how to be an entrepreneur 101 through their course and curriculum. The one thing the Military Spouse Chamber is not is an educational curriculum. So I like to make those recommendations. And then a couple of the things as a resource for launching a business and finding success in self-employment would be the Military Spouse Chamber's certification. And so if you think of how you can go, if you're a veteran or a woman or a minority or a person with a disability, so forth, and get certified as a veteran-owned business, we have created the first and only certification for military spouse business owners. And we have just recently celebrated the accomplishment. Within a year and a half, we've certified 100 businesses plus. And I can say with confidence that today the military spouses being certified, we're roughly in the same place today as veteran-owned businesses would have been just over 10 years ago when that certification started. So with further support and advocacy from us, you'll see our certification hopefully getting deeply recognized with hopefully government contracting in the future. And we are going door to door talking to employers and corporations to recognize military spouses in supplier diversity initiatives broadly. So we've already got support from companies like Disney, CVS. We're working on some other ones. AT&T's recently signed on, and I cannot remember them all off the top of my head, but just big corporate brand names are recognizing our military spouses and hiring them for opportunities. And then additionally, the chamber offers different things that you might not think of, like benefits. You know, you're self-employed, you don't always have a retirement plan, right? And so we offer group plans, individual plans, and then we offer insurance type benefits as well. Because as a self-employed individual, those are things that you often need but don't have, nor do you know where to go get them. So the Military Spouse Chamber provides the ability to get access to those things and at a group discounted rate as well.
Really super and really practical as well. Lourdes, I'd love to ask you a little bit about the VA Center, and in particular, the VA Center for Women's Veterans. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and why it's so important?
Thank you so much. And Jamie just provided some really, really great resources. So thank you, Jamie, for all of that. So the VA Center for Women Veterans is an entity that falls right underneath the Secretary. So we report to the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Our job specifically is to not only advise the Secretary on all things that impacts women veterans, because our center's work transcends all three agencies of Veterans Benefits, Veterans Healthcare, as well as National Cemetery. Not only do we do that, but we also monitor and coordinate a lot of the programs and services and initiatives across VA that impacts women veterans. We advocate for women veterans who are trying to navigate our services and the benefits, as well as making sure that we are advocating for everyone to ensure that we treat our women veterans with dignity and respect. I did want to do a little bit of a get away a little bit from this question, because I think what happened earlier when Jamie added the part that she's a woman veteran, that is one of the things that we find that is a hurdle right now with our women veterans who are also spouses. Like one particular archetype usually will override another, and then they forget that part of themselves sometimes until someone else reminds them. It's like, you are also a veteran as well as that. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. And so that's one of the things that we're really trying to make sure to double down and working towards to overcome.
Yeah, it's a great point, Lourdes. I've had people working for me for years in Blue Star families before I found out that in addition to being a military spouse, they were also a veteran. They just never brought it up. And so that is something we need to teach people. If you have that status, share it in addition to your military spouse status.
Yep, you can be both.
You can be both, yeah. Danielle, I'd love to hear a little bit about your job search as a veteran transitioning out.
Sure. I think part of that, before I go into that, I wanted to preface it with, I came from a military family. I'm a fourth generation veteran. And so growing up, I always knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, right? I never had to really think about that, do any deep digging, figure out what my interests were. And then leaving the military kind of unexpectedly after 10 and a half years was a different story. I left as a disabled veteran, and I really knew I wanted to do something different, but had no idea where to start. And so the job search is something that the military tries to prepare you for. You know, I took my ACAP, my Soldier for Life, like all of these classes, which may have a different name depending on your branch, but they're pretty similar, right? They're to help you with your resume and to get you taking these kind of like online questionnaires and thinking about what your skills are, what you're good at, what your interests are. And even just in spite of going through all of that, I still really struggled with the job search. I struggled with talking to people and hearing that, yeah, you know, putting your resume in front of a recruiter is important, or applying for a job is important, but the majority of jobs are like through word of mouth or through networking, right? And I'm like, I don't know anything about networking other than to leverage that was a challenge. And my job search initially took me 9 months. And part of that was, you know, I was transitioning from the military and wanting to learn more and go into social media. And that's not something the military necessarily had prepared me for. So that was kind of like an additional factor. And I think, yeah, I would be the first to admit that like I really struggled with my job search. I struggled with not having community, not having other people who were going through the same thing, and feeling like I had to, or that I wanted to do a lot of it on my own, which I do not recommend. So those were some of the factors that kind of went into why I personally felt like job search was challenging for me at the time. Since then, obviously, like working with AARP and also, being a part of organizations which are trying to help veterans has clued me into a lot of resources that are out there. So you don't have to go at it alone, whether you're a military spouse or a female veteran or however you identify. I think there are definitely a lot of tools out there, which I would love to talk about a few of those today. So hopefully I didn't go too much off topic, but yeah, it's a little bit about me.
That is very interesting. And I think it's very humanizing for people who are watching, that even people are successful and are experts on panel. They went through times when that was not what life was like for them. And so
Yeah.
I'd like to just follow up with that about some of the resources that you've developed in your job now, maybe Resume Builder or maybe some others that you'd like to draw attention to kind of help people see in a little more granular level.
Sure.
Take those steps.
I love that you bring up resumes because that is a big challenge for a lot of people who are transitioning from the military, right? We have these very detailed, very granular military resumes that we carry with us through our entire time in the military. And then you leave the military and you have all of this experience. You've gone on deployments, you've built up like a very specific type of experience, but trying to translate that into civilian terms that civilian employers can understand or even begin to grasp of what you're talking about, that is difficult, right? So one tool I'd love to talk about is Resume Advisor. You can find it at aarp.org/vets job center. And so it's a tool that helps you kind of decode your resume and get it into civilian shape, right? So military, we have our own acronyms, we speak our own language. Whether you are a Milspouse or a veteran, you know what I'm talking about. And so part of that is like trying to decode what you've done and just get it into a vocabulary that a civilian employer can understand, because you have leadership experience, you have a great work ethic, right? You have experience managing logistics, whether it's an arms room or a property book or whatever that might be. And I know I'm talking specifically to female veterans, but if you're a military spouse, you have a lot of similar traits, right? Because you've been with your service member the entire time. You know what I'm talking about. And so Resume Advisor is a great tool to help you break down your resume and build it back up in terms that an employer can understand, even if they don't have that military background. So that's one tool I definitely recommend. But we also have a job board with a vets preferred or vets wanted filter. So it's to help you search for companies that are actually searching for you, right? We want to work with veteran-friendly employers who value our experience, who value our backgrounds, and won't be intimidated, by the fact that our resume might look a little bit different from the next person's. And whether that's because you have military experience or whether you have a resume gap or whether you've left a one type of job and deployed with your spouse to Okinawa and had to completely rebuild your career, there are reasons why our resumes are going to look a little bit different. So it's nice to know that there are employers out there who want to work with veterans and who want to work with military families.
Yes, that's great, Danielle. Jamie, I'd like to pick up something Danielle was talking about going it alone and the need for friends and for peers. And I'd love to talk about your perspective on mentoring and peer-to-peer resources.
I will answer that question in a moment, but I've been seeing a lot of chatter about remote work in the chat, and I just wanted to make a quick observation of everyone's interest in working from home. Putting my Amazon hat on, Amazon has a policy that if you are a military spouse, you get to work from home. So we've hired thousands of military spouses across every imaginable job title and business line within Amazon. And while some of them do work in person, it's a first line manager choice. And if your job is able to be done from home, you just get an automatic exemption and you get to do it from home. So I wanted to point that out since I saw so many people interested in remote work. But back to your original question on mentorship. I very much, both as a veteran and then as a military spouse, feel like I don't always quite fit into the communities where I live. And I believe that especially in the self-employment realm, you're usually in the minority of the people around you. If you live on the base or off the base and in a military community, there are so few other self-employed people around you that you feel very alone, very isolated. And I think that mentorship serves a lot of purposes. As a business owner or as a professional, sometimes you walk into a new role and you have to wear all of these hats, right? You are the chief executive of your company, you're the IT department, you're HR, you're human resources, and you're all the things. And I think that you need a mentor, first of all, just for a sanity check and for accountability to keep you on the straight and narrow and make sure that you're doing things the way that you need to be doing things. Second thing you need to do is just get a professional mentor that can help you improve, whether you're running a business or whether you're employed at a corporation or a small or medium-sized business. You need to learn how to do the best job you can do. And truthful and honest feedback from a mentor is one of the best ways to keep improving. And then the last thing is we all have challenges. We're military spouses. We're relocating. We're transitioning from the military if you're a veteran. And we need mentors that we can have a hard cry on their shoulder with once in a while to help us sort of get unstuck. So I think I heard a rule that I love, and I like this for mentorship, but it's the 33% rule. Basically, to surround yourself with 33% senior level mentors that are above you, 33% peer mentors, those people you can cry on their shoulder with and talk at the same level with, and then to turn around and give back to 33% of people that are your subordinates that you can help lift up as well.
That's awesome, Jamie. I love that. That's a good rule. I'll take that on. Lourdes, I see you're contributing some in the chat, and so I want to invite you to expand upon some of your thoughts out loud.
Yes, so I was trying to answer some of the questions while others were talking, but so there are several questions regarding which companies are committing to working remote, but also supporting veterans. And one thing that I'll say is that there's a lot of companies that, though their marketing might not be as great, that have employee resource groups. And I know that a lot of large organizations have veteran employee resource groups or military families employee resource groups. And those are communities within a particular organization that actually invites those who are veterans and military families to kind of congregate together to address some of the challenges that they find while working in that organization that's unique to that particular population. I know that when I came from Airbnb, like I said, I came from quite a few different sectors. At Airbnb, we also have a veteran employee resource group. I was helping to lead that one before I left. And one of the things that I wrote on the chat is that there's a lot of tech companies that have committed to allowing remote work for a lot of their employees, because COVID has proven that they can still be successful while having their employees remote. One of the things that I also wanted to kind of touch on is on what Danielle had talked about with regard to not having a community. I think that it's a great call out, because whether it is work, whether it is in education, when you feel like you're the only one that's trying to do it and you don't have a model of an example, it's really, really intimidating to start off. I know that when I came from my transition, I was in a critical care air transport team. For those who don't know, it's like, think flying intensive care unit, right? It's flying ICU. And so when we talk about how do you translate that into civilian terms, some people will see that as like a one-to-one. You are a cardiopulmonary specialist or a nurse or a doc. Then of course in the civilian sector, that's what you can be. Now, I will challenge some people's thoughts that that's the only thing that you can be, because just because you're good at something doesn't mean that that's what you enjoy. Like, I may be great at math, which I'm not, but absolutely hate accounting and hate doing it. And so why would I subject myself into a career that I hate every time that I walk into it? So what I will challenge you folks to look at is not look at just what you're good at, but what is it that drives a fire in you? Because that's what's going to allow you to weather a lot of the storms that you find as you get into an actual role that you're starting to get into. And it also helps with growth. you don't know what else you can do if you don't challenge yourself to a larger scope of thinking. Case in point, again, I'll just use myself as an example. But when I got out of the military, I was working at a hospital because, of course, I was in healthcare, but I was a little antsy. I was one of those that I felt like there's got to be something more that I can do. I'm coming from an ICU to a very like regular routine job that is not my speed. And so I started volunteering for a humanitarian organization called Team Rubicon, which is a veteran-led disaster response organization. And so we are the ones who go into the tornadoes, into the earthquakes and flooding, and we're the ones running into those areas. And that's where I found that I discovered a passion for humanitarian work and another kind of service. And I raised this up because I had no background in humanitarian work, by the way. I only know medicine. But as a volunteer and falling in love with the work, I was truly inspired to learn as much as I can, so that within several years, I was able to leverage that experience as a volunteer and all of the work that the online FEMA courses allowed to actually leverage that into a job in the humanitarian sector. So coming out from a volunteer in the humanitarian sector, leveraging that into a job at Airbnb in the social impact space, into tech. So I say that because there are several different avenues. If you're thinking about a career change and a career pivot, there are more than one way. There's more than just, hey, I need to go to school for it. Sometimes you can just do volunteer work. And I'm not saying this is for everything, but sometimes you can do volunteer work, gain that experience, show proficiency, and really leverage that into a new trajectory.
Yeah, it's a great point. Danielle, I'm reading a lot of reaction on your face. Do you have some thoughts there that come to mind?
I agree 100%. The job that I do now isn't really related at all to the job that I did while I was in the military. Towards the end of my time in the military, I was getting into social media on a personal level, right? So I was doing things just for myself and kind of learning as I went with the different platforms I was on. Created a couple of affinity groups in the outdoor space because I love the outdoors. And that's how I helped build up my social media resume, which I did not have through the military because it just wasn't the job that I was doing. And so that's what got me my first job as a social media manager, which helped me kind of climb the ladder within that field. So definitely, you're right. Your volunteer time, like your hobbies, not saying that, everything needs to be like a side hustle, or that, if you love what you do, you should make a job out of it. Not saying that. But in some cases, it is helpful. In some cases, it is relevant, especially if you want to transition and try something a little different, maybe that has better chance of remote work or better flexibility that works for you and your family. So yeah, I love that example that you offered. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to offer something from my experience too, and then go to Jamie. I think being imaginative and taking yourself in different directions can be fantastic. I also, in my experience, think that being opportunistic and responsive to what the world brings to you is sometimes in our lives as a military spouse really helpful. And I think it's sometimes important to remember that male spouses do not have the income hit or the unemployment or underemployment that female spouses have. So there may be an intersection between the way we as women bring ourselves to the workforce, in addition to the military affiliation, that we can work against. And I saw that myself, and I'll just give this one little example. Like I said, I had a successful career before I married my husband, and then was unemployed and had to reinvent a number of times. And I actually went back to law school after I got married, because the kind of work I did when I married my husband, I couldn't do when we were moving around. And I did one kind of law, and then we moved on. I had to do another kind of law because these things went around. And at one point I found myself, and often part-time or remote, because that was moved 9 times in 16 years. So you got to take what you can get. I found myself working for a guy who had been a friend, doing some compliance work for him. He needed an investment. And he said, can you go out and figure out how to invest in education project in a low-income neighborhood for me because I have some funds that need to get spent for this this program we're in. And I said to him, you understand that I don't know how to do that, right? That's not what I'm trained to do. And he said, you're smart, you'll figure it out. And I did. And we made the investment. It was a very motivating experience for me. But we don't need to be the ones to say, I can't do that. And often when men go to a job, they're not the ones saying, oh, I'm not 110% qualified, therefore I won't do it. So let's also not take ourselves out of the running. Let's look for those relationships where people will believe in us. And then, let's take those leaps and go forward. And I'll say as well, one more thing. When I started Blue Star Families, I thought we were going for a small organization. I would be on the board and we would have maybe one paid staff person and that was it. But when the community needed more from us, I had to figure out how to, deliver more for us and be present and be part of, make this my work in a way that wasn't something that had been planned. Jamie, I'd love to hear your thoughts about these issues.
Just briefly, a little bit of self-advocacy goes a long way. I have found, going back to what Lourdes said earlier, there was a period of time when I was a new military spouse, I didn't tell anyone I was even a veteran. And then now that I'm a military spouse, you hear the stigma, don't tell the employer you're a military spouse because then they won't hire you because they have a bias. And I'm just baloney. That's what I think. A little bit of self-advocacy goes a long way. If you are vocal about who you are and about your identity, you'll weed out the crappy employers that don't want anything to do with you and you'll find the right place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. We've got incredible participation in the chat. We'll have to all get together again. Before I let you go, I have one final question. If you could give one piece of advice to a military spouse or female veteran on the job search right now, they're looking right now, what would that be? Jamie, let me start with you.
Mind the gap. I know that sounds kind of generic, but there's a data point from McKinsey. I don't have the exact percentages in my head, but basically there's this data point that says female veterans make about the same as non-military men. And they make less than male veterans. And then, of course, we know that there's a massive pay gap for military spouses. And so when I say mind the gap, I mean, let's go there. Let's talk about that taboo topic of money. Because when you're pursuing employment and trying to negotiate your job offer, or when you're running a business and trying to figure out how to price your services, you are valuable and you have a lot of worth. And people are willing to pay you for that worth more than you could ever imagine if only you mind the gap and realize my male peers or my fellow veteran male peers are making more money than I am. And if you just do that little bit of self-advocacy, I think you can get compensated both in self-employment and in traditional employment more than you ever dreamed of.
Fantastic, Jamie. Thank you. Lourdes, one piece of advice for current job seeker.
I think Jamie hit it a little bit earlier, but there is such a thing as imposter syndrome, that we will take ourselves out before we've even started that race. And so don't let yourself fall into that trap. It's easier said than done. I will say that. But if I can just offer one advice is, one, be mindful and aware that it exists and actively resist taking yourself out of the running. Let them tell you no, but don't you ever tell yourself no.
Terrific. Danielle, last word. Ooh, she may have frozen. Not sure if we're going to get her. Oh, there you are. But you're muted. Still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Got it.
Okay. I think I have two. One is to visit aarp.org/vets job center. And that's a way to connect with all of the resources that I mentioned earlier, like Resume Advisor, our Skills Builder, Veterans Advantage course. We have a lot of offerings to help you in your job search as either a military spouse or a women veteran. And I think the second piece of advice would go back to finding community it's really important. Don't go at this alone. It can be frustrating. Job searching is a full to other people, whether you do that through volunteering or through professional networking or however you go about it. Just make sure you find your community and stay connected.
Well, that's super. Thank you so much, Jamie, Lourdes, and Danielle. It was really amazing to have you all with us today.
Thank you.
And with that great transition about finding your community, that's our job here at Blue Star Families, is to help you find your community. And we have an amazing person to help you find your community and travel with you on your job search. That's our very own Laura Torres. Laura is the head of our Spouse Force program. She is the Senior Manager of Workforce Partnerships and Diverse Talent Sourcing. She will be your best friend on your job search. So if you're not already connected to Laura, I hope you will get connected to her now on this chat. Together with Laura, I'm bringing on Lacey Craig from T-Mobile to talk about career interviews, tips, and tricks.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for that introduction. Thank you for the cheerleading. And for everyone out there, absolutely, please connect with me and we'll find you a welcoming place for your career growth. We have absolutely endless possibilities. Hello, everyone. Like I was already mentioned, I'm Laura Torres, where I support my community by identifying meaningful career opportunities and resources to meet our military lifestyle. For this segment, I'm honored to welcome one of the key employer partners who is supporting our employment initiatives, Lacey Craig, Senior Manager, Military and Diversity Recruiting at T-Mobile. Lacey?
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everybody, for having me here today. It's so great to be amongst such a powerhouse and group of individuals. And like Laura said, my name is Lacey Craig. I'm a senior program manager on the military and diversity recruiting team with T-Mobile. And I also serve on the board of advisors for Veterans Legal Institute in California. My military affiliation is my dad served in the military for 35 years. And I have been connecting our military community to careers for over 7 years now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you for your service and for all of your support. You definitely are a great champion of our community. And we're so grateful to have this relationship with you and for you to be part of our community. Now, as you know, our goal for this webinar, along with welcoming thousands of military families into their new communities, is to take this opportunity to share resources, tools, and of course, content that is welcoming regardless of their location. But also we want to hear tips and tricks to maximize the career opportunities straight from the experts like yourself. Now, Danielle from AARP directed us to the resume advisor at AARP Career Center for veterans and military spouses, and we definitely are going to go and explore that a little bit later and share all the updates and the links at our sponsors virtual community. But for you, I would love for us to talk about interviewing and interviewing tips. Now, you've been supporting our military community, as I mentioned, and facilitating our participation in the workforce for years now. So you know our strengths and our areas where we can facilitate a little bit of extra growth. But from your experience, what would you say are some of those tips and tricks for interviewing, and how can we mentally prepare? We got the resume, now we got the interview. How do we get there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I love what Jamie said so much earlier about finding the right company, because I think it all starts with that. Just because you get the interview doesn't mean that it's a good fit. And I think starting with the interview, it's about understanding, why do you want this job? What's important about this company that you align with? Where are your personal values and priorities that align with the company? Do your research and understand really why you want to work for them. Understand what is attractive about the company that you want to work for, and what they stand for, making sure that that's also what you want to represent and what you're doing every day. I think that also for the interview, just being aware of anything you need to ask them, having questions prepared, having your own personal non-negotiables that you bring to the interview. So don't sacrifice those because you're trying to impress an employer, because the right employer will understand what's important to you, what you have going on in your life. And if you're a great fit for the role, there will be room to negotiate that and work with that. And I think it's so tricky sometimes because it's hard to really navigate and understand what do you share during an interview. But you're also interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So make sure that you have the confidence that you have what it takes to do the job and that you belong there. It's really important to be on the same page from the very beginning. You don't want to get into a job that you were hired on false pretenses from either side, either from the company or from you, just not being true to what your own values and levels of importance are.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the non-negotiables, because that is really key. We have to be very honest sometimes with ourselves or with the current lifestyle. Sometimes it's not the right fit at the moment, but that's not to say that you cannot interview with a purpose, volunteer with a purpose, or find other, part-time opportunities until you find your the right calling and your meaningful employment opportunity. And then, of course, we're here to support you. We have a community right here at Blue Star Families and Blue Star Careers that will definitely navigate this employment situation. Absolutely not on your own. You have a community here. But Lacey, I want to talk about the latest trending tools that are actually happening right now, and a lot of military spouses are getting exposed to, which is video interviewing. That's a new, I guess you can say, a new way sometimes as of the pandemic, or just simply because of all the technology and the new, fast and furious sort of a workforce development changes. What are some of those interviewing tips and tricks that you can prepare us for video preparing? Knowing, our strengths and our challenges, how can we ace that interview nowadays with so many life demands?
Yeah, I think it's important to start by understanding that you should treat the virtual interview the same as you would in person. I always recommend that people give themselves, if you were to commute 15 or 20 minutes to go to an in-person interview, give yourself that time to get set up in front of your computer, get yourself together, get yourself composed, so that you're not just going from one room to the next and hopping on the computer for your interview. Make sure you really have that prep time so that you're prepared and in a good mental space to hop on that camera for your interview. I think that it's also important to make sure that you're testing your audio and video ahead of time. It's really tricky. So many different employers use different platforms that they're interviewing you on. Sometimes it's WebEx, sometimes it's Zoom. And you really want to make sure that you've downloaded that ahead of time, that you're familiar with the platform before you hop onto the interview, and that they can hear and see you okay. Also evaluating your setting and background, making sure there's no distractions. While a lot of employers are very understanding, like Laura said, I think COVID just changed life for all of us, and video is the way to go, and life happens. I know I have dogs at home that I feel like want to be part of every single call and interview I do. But sometimes it can be very distracting. So not so much for the employer, but for me, I need to make sure that I'm focused on what I'm doing and not having those distractions in the background. And, be okay and be fair to yourself. If you don't think that taking the interview from home is a good idea, if you don't have a quiet place, give yourself the opportunity to find a community center or a community partner like Blue Star Families that you can go and use one of their interview rooms to take the call so that you really feel prepared. And, it's really about you making sure you're comfortable with your setting, and any good employer is going to understand if things are happening in the background. I interviewed a military spouse this morning. First thing, she's apologizing to me because her kids are at home. But you shouldn't have to apologize for your life and how you're showing up, because that's the reality. And the fact is that, that spouse was trying to make an advancement by finding a career. And sometimes that's what happens. And the right employer will be understanding of that. But I felt it more from her end on feeling the stress of the environment and the distractions. So just make sure you're preparing yourself for how you're going to feel comfortable in that setting.
Absolutely. Those are fantastic tips. And if I may add, give yourself, to all military spouse community, give yourself some grace. There's a lot going on in the workforce in general, in our lifestyle, the transitioning, the next steps and the next things. So give yourself some grace and prepare, but always, of course, keep it professionally. And then my biggest tip, of course, on my end that I always do is I always communicate with my family and my loved ones, especially if I'm doing it from home, to understand that I am blocked for a specific time. It is extremely important for them to honor that, so that they don't walk in, don't do any noise, don't do any specific request from me, because that is a very important event happening on my end. So that's very important. Now,
And
before
that they're not taking up our internet, to get the kids
Absolutely.
off those video games and tell them to stop streaming the Netflix for a few minutes.
That is
so that
key
we're
right there. Yes, so that you have good quality video. And you're right, because sometimes WebEx versus Zoom versus some of those other tools, depending on what the employer is using for your interview, it uses different, it can take up a little bit more bandwidth, or the video quality can really hurt you sometimes and not provide a full, picture of what your interview or your answers might really look like.
definitely.
Yeah. So before we send it back to Kathy, I do want to ask you, what are some of those next projects for you, and how can we pay it forward?
Yeah, so very similar to what Jamie shared here at T-Mobile, we do also have a military spouse exception policy, where if you live outside of a business office, RBO, one of our headquarters offices, we will support a remote role with you. We'll work with the hiring manager to be able to do that. So as long as it's a role that we can support in that dimension, we will do that. So we're really working hard to support career placement for any of our candidates. But more so, I just want to say, thank you for the continued incredible partnership with everything that you're doing with military families, as well as socializing career opportunities here at T-Mobile. We really strive to support our military community and really appreciate partnerships like Blue Star Families.
Thank you so much. And we definitely appreciate you and appreciate AARP and the wonderful resources that it recently launched out for our community members. And be sure that we will have all of those updates and continuously share them with our military spouse community and our spouse virtual community, for everyone to stay completely up to date on the latest activities. Now, let's give it back to Kathy. Thank you so much for all your time today. And everyone, please keep posting your questions. Kathy?
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks so much, Laura and Lacey. That was a fantastic conversation. And now I am super excited to turn things over to our spouse makeover video. E'Beth Goad is the personal brand and change strategist, and she is here to help Jana, a Blue Star Families member and a job seeker, to see how to dress for success for an interview. So let's take a look.
Hi, Janae. I'm E'Beth.
Hi, E'Beth.
It's so nice to meet you. I'm a personal wardrobe stylist, and what I do is work with women to teach them how to look and feel like $1,000,000, but we do it without breaking the bank.
It's so nice to meet you, E'Beth. I'm Janae. I'm an Army veteran and a former military spouse, and I'm currently working at an entry-level position, operations support, but I'm looking for a better paying job, something with more opportunities for growth.
So many exciting changes for you as well. So
Yes.
you are probably going to be interviewing virtually. And so one of the things that I talk about is a little something called impression management, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that we are going to manage the first impression that somebody has of you. 80% of their takeaway comes from your visual presence. When you're going in for an interview, you want to have an elevated look on camera, but gone are the days necessarily when you would show up and you would wear a traditional black suit, white blouse, that sort of thing. My recommendation is to wear something that is a little bit softer. You could still wear a blazer if that's something that you liked, but maybe rather than going with a starched collar, for instance, you could wear like a shell underneath. Do not be afraid to embrace color. Color on camera is really important because it really gives sort of a visual effect. Now, you see today I'm wearing black, but I got my pop of color by wearing a red lip. Interestingly enough, one of the most memorable colors is sort of an electric blue or a cobalt blue. And that color is universally flattering, which means that it can be worn by anybody. When you go to be on camera, you want to make sure that you're not wearing prints that are really bold or conversely, that are very small. So if you were to wear a print like this, it gets to be very confusing to the eye, where something that's a little bit more solid is going to have more of an effect. Some other things to consider are lighting. You want to make sure that the light is facing you. If you don't have a ring light or an attachment light for your phone, you can actually set up a table in front of a window to get the natural light coming in towards your face. So if you're backlit, what happens is that it draws shadows on your face. You're just not as vibrant on camera. So making sure that you are lit up with sort of a distraction-free background is really, really the way to go. What would you say your biggest challenge is at this point?
I do feel like sometimes when I'm searching too much, I get a little overwhelmed and I have to stop and take a break and just try not to let everything, the need or desire for the job. Sometimes I get so excited and there's just a bit of like word vomit when I'm interviewing.
Exactly. One of the things that I recommend is, we often are so worried about taking up space, and it's a nervous habit of speaking very, very quickly, and I am especially guilty of that because I speak quickly anyway, and so I have to remember to slow it down. And one tip is to put a sticky note on your laptop that says slow down. I would say before you go in, it's a good idea to, this is going to sound sort of silly, before you go on camera, you can turn on the music really loud. You can let out a big yell, and you can do a power pose, which sounds crazy, but a power pose is where you do sort of a superwoman pose, and you put your hands on your hips and you say, "I've got this." But this actually has been proven that to refocus you and to give you to come in with the right mindset for the job interview, or if you're doing a presentation. So any other questions?
That was it. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge with me. This has been an amazing experience.
Absolutely.
Excited
I
to
am
get out there.
well, I am so delighted, and I wish you well on your journey. You'll have to email me and let me know, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. Well, with that, we will bring it to a close, but thank you so very much for meeting with me, and we will talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Well, super. That concludes our session. Thank you for all of our amazing guests who joined us today. And a very special thank you to our friends at AARP for their partnership and for their support of our military and veteran connected community, including their most recent endeavor to help support military spouse and female veteran employment here with Blue Star Families Today. We have one more surprise for you today, giveaways. We have 2 Google Chromebooks valued at $1,500 each. Google, with their Grow with Google program, is an amazing partner with Blue Star Families, and we have ways we can connect you into their fantastic programs, which is great for people wanting to be self-employed or get more tech savvy. 2 Google Chromebooks, because you're signed up for this event and you are here, you are entered to win. We have a personal wardrobe styling session with E'Beth Goad, personal brand and change strategist. Because you are here, you are signed up to win. We have a signed copy of Grateful American, A Journey from Self to Service by the fabulous Gary Sinise. And we have gift baskets of goodies from our friends at Ulta Beauty. All of you on right now are entered to win, and we will be announcing the winners in a post-event email. Look for a post-event email also, so you can fill out an evaluation. Let us know what you liked about this, what you'd like to see more of. That will help us deliver programs to you that you want and need. Blue Star Welcome Week, helping the 600,000 military-connected families who are on the move across the U.S. this year, helping them get welcomed into their community. Blue Star Welcome Week is continuing on until October 2nd. Learn more at the Blue Star Welcome Week website. More great programs, more great giveaways every single day. Thank you, AARP. AARP's Veteran and Military Spouse Job Center is awesome. Check it out. And thank you to everyone here for joining us here today. I hope to see you soon. Take care.